Okay, Shalom Chevra. Let's understand a little bit more about the snake, about Paroi. You know, it's interesting that the ancient Egyptians had so much snake symbology, snakes coming out of the third eye, all that type of stuff. Because everything about Paro, everything about the snake, that's the clippers, that's everything that we reject. Let's just get a little bit more of a picture, because the Parsha, these Torah portions arouse the energy of this time. So it says about Paroi, when Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moses was going to begin the series of the plagues, in order to break down the Egyptians and moreover to teach Emunah to the Jewish people, to make it obvious and clear that there's nothing but you, Hashem, and you run every single facet of existence. So Hashem told Moshe to go to Paro, Hine Yoitze HaMayma, that Paro is going out to the river. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Kvad lev Paroi, me'ein l'shalach ha'am, lech el Paro ba'boiker, go find Pharaoh in the morning time, Hine Yoitze HaMayma, he's going out to the water. Why do you have to go and find Pharaoh in the morning when he's going out to the water? What's significant about that? Says Rashi, quoting from the Medrash Tanchuma, famously, L'tzarchei nekavav. He was going to the bathroom. Why was he going to the bathroom?
Because everyone thought that he was going to go to the bathroom.
So Paro had this God complex. We've all got our complexes, but he had a really bad one. It's called, he thought he was God. That's like a bad one. You know? You're in a lot of trouble. So he was really holding in that place that he thought he was God, and he had some very strange opinions about himself. That li hayor v'ani sisani, that to me is the Nile and I created myself. And why don't you think about that one a little bit? Paro, you made yourself. How'd you do that? This part, the self that wasn't there before you made yourself. Okay, that was the least of Paro's problems. So one of the things is that he wanted people to believe that he was God, but he knew better. So what would he do? He would go out early in the morning when nobody was looking, because people thought if he's a God, so gods don't have to use the bathroom. Right? Gods don't use the bathroom. Humans do. So Paro, if he's a God, so it's so interesting, we never see him going to the bathroom. Why was that? Because he went out early in the morning to the bathroom. So nobody saw it. But God knew that he was going to the bathroom, so God told Moshe, go get Paro. He's going out, but he thinks nobody's looking. Shahaya oisa atzmei elikah, eliha. V'oimer she'enut sarach la'olim l'nekava. I don't need to go. So what happened? Mashkim ba'barke v'yoytze l'nilus v'oisa sham tzrachim. He woke up early in the morning, would go and do his business, and exactly at that point, he's like, Moshe, excuse me. What you doing, Paro? And of course, what are we bringing out from this? Is that world of Klippa, it's nothing. It plays a big game. That evil of the world, it makes itself very puffed up, but in the end it has nothing. It has nothing. What else happened? That world of evil that tries to make everything it's like a big charade, the whole thing, but it looks really good. I remember one time I went to, it could have been one of these Disneyland places, and I remember they had this set up, and it looked so real, like you were literally in this, it felt like there's buildings and castles, and I remember I was like one of these rebellious kids that I went like where you're not supposed to go. So they had like fences, and I hopped the fence, and I looked behind, and it was all just on stilts. The whole thing was just, but they made it look like this, like huge, like just as far as the eye can see, like fantasy land. But it was just smoke and mirrors. It all disappears. Once you just catch the bluff of the Yetzer Hara, the whole thing disappears. Moshe Rabbeinu catches Paro with his pants down. So it looks so intense. Paroi! But he's just smoke and mirrors. So it's very, very interesting. What else happens? He goes And the whole way of that evil point is that it believes that everything depends on it. I control everything. So, what did we do first? We hit the Nile and turned it into blood. That was step number one. Because what was the belief of the Nile? The Nile was also a god. Of course, not as great as Paro. But the Nile was also a god because they didn't need rain in Egypt. So what would happen? The Nile would just swell up and all the crops would become fully nurtured from the overflow of the Nile. So what was the first plague? The very source that you think is all life and all giving, we're going to strike that place. You call that God, we're going to strike that place. And at that point, it turns into blood. And then all the other water afterwards turns into blood. Even the water in people's cups. They went to make a shahakal, and the second they looked at the cup, it turned into blood. Blood was in the bathtubs, blood was in the pools, blood was in the jacuzzis, blood was everywhere. Do you think blood was in the mikvah? Blood everywhere. Crazy, right? Dam. This is today, this week's parasha. Blood everywhere. Mamish. Dam. Everything was blood. Everything is blood. And so everyone's freaking out. They can't drink, they can't eat anything. And the pasuk says that they were like tired out. What does it mean they were tired out? It means they realized there was nothing they could do to stop it. It was blood now. They couldn't stop what had happened. They wanted to say, maybe we could figure out a way to get out of this mess. It was all blood. The only way, by the way, for them to get water, they had to buy it from the Jews. And it was miraculous. And if they bought it, then what we had as water would stay water if it came to them. But if we gave them water and we didn't buy it, they would drink and it'd be blood. And even, all the kids' books always have this, it's one of my favorite pictures. They had, an Egyptian and a Eade drinking from it's like a milkshake, two, and one was drinking, so the straw that went to the Eade was water, or milkshake. And the one that went to the Mitzri was blood. The same thing. And then what happened? So Pharaoh says to Moshe, come on. But this is black magic. What here? And he got his necromancers to do a few little tricks, and they also made a little bit of blood. Nothing impressive, like a little section of the water to turn into blood. So he says, Moshe, what, you're coming in, you want to come sell straw to farmers? We're farmers over here. Farmers, you have to sell them straw. Their whole life is straw. Don't come and try sell straw where we all have straw. He was saying, Moshe, you think you're going to do some magic? This is Egypt. We're the best in magic. You're going to come and show us your trick? We do magic like nobody knows. We're the best. And so easy, it just slips away. The emunah. So there's going to be another makkah, and another makkah, and another makkah. And as we go through this, more than it was to punish the Mitzrim, it was a systematic revelation to Klal Yisrael that God controls every single facet of existence. Everything in the world that you think would be an option, i.e. a klippa of like it's selling you something, was again shown to be that it's only God running it. It's only Hashem. It's only Hashem running everything. That's what the plagues were. They showed you every area that you would think that maybe there's another option, there's another way to explain it. Again, Hashem showed absolute control. You have to think about this during these days. Every area that I think that there's another option, that there's another power, it's only you, Hashem. It's only you. So I want to open up actually the last parak of Shovim, and then we're going to go back. The last parak speaks a little bit about these parashas. Parak Hey. On Kuf Samach Tes, Yitzias Mitzrayim. Lahavinas Ashayches Shel Tikana Bris Limei Shovim. There's a connection between guarding that bris, which we've been talking about, protecting that covenant, which means that God says He's going to be our God, and our end of the deal is we're going to stay away from things that block your light in the world. We're going to reject them. Noida Masha Kosav Arizal. Everybody knows what the Arizal says. Shayom Shekayrim B'Torah B'Parsha Shmois Va'era Ba B'Shalach Yisrei Mishpatim Shem Rasha Tevis Shoivim. Shoiv means the wayward ones, the crazy ones. And it's specifically these days. Hein Yom HaMesugol N'Tikkun HaBris. People know these are days to fix that covenant. If I, so to speak, have engaged in activities, I've engaged in thought processes, I've engaged in belief systems that are Pharaoh-type beliefs. And the modern equivalent of the Pharaoh-type beliefs that continue to deny God's presence amongst evidence and obvious reality of God running the world, that will continue to deny that until the bitter end. During these days, we are doing tshuva on the fact that we invested or we fell prey to the Pharaoh inside of ourselves, the Pharaoh on our computer, yes.
Why just specifically these days we're trying to fix? I feel like throughout the whole year you're trying to fix your problems and overcome your titles.
Beautiful.
Just these specific 8 weeks or 10 weeks.
Beautiful. So the answer is you're correct. We do want to do this all the time. This is the essence of all of life, is to fix this bris. It just happens to be during these days it's very potent that we can achieve it. God is very much helping us because He's saying during these days is when He's actually about to say it right now, that during the time that when we went to Egypt, that whole process of going to Egypt and coming out and then receiving the Torah was fixing the original bris that became contaminated in the times of Adam and Eve and the times of the flood and the times of Noah. The going down to Egypt is a fixing of that original bris, because the original bris that Adam did what he did, and he signed a bit of a contract with the snake, and he was seduced. That was the original problem of the bris. That was the original. It says that he was made for his bris, that he literally blemished that covenant, because God told him to do something, and He says, I want you to be careful not to fall prey to any snakes and any energy that will tell you to do something against my will. And Adam did what he did, which is therefore it's the most quintessential experience of the breaking of that covenant. That was Adam and the snake. That happened again in the times of Noah, when the whole world broke that covenant. The world became immoral at a level where they signed it into constitution. That was the severeness of the times of the Mabul. It wasn't enough that they were doing a rayas, but they made it the halacha. They made it law. They made ksubas that there should be humans and animals getting together. They made it that this is our right. Sounds a little bit like what's going on. And that you can't speak out against that. And Hashem said, that's a big problem. Because it wasn't that they were just doing it. They made it like a righteous movement. That we deserve this. And we can do whatever we feel. And it's my choice to do whatever I want. And if you say anything different than me, then you're racist. Except for the fact that anybody can think whatever they want unless they disagree with you. Which doesn't make any logical sense. You believe that everyone can have a fair opinion, except that they disagree with you. So they made that the halacha in the times of the flood. They codified that. And because of that, there needed to be a total restart for humanity. And because specifically in the area of the bris, they were very pogum. It was a tremendous time of contamination. So the midah keneged midah of just spilling and like anything went. So the consequence and the result of that was a flood. A flood is, you're flooding the world with that energy, the flood will have to flood you. And it was only Noah and his family that were righteous. Noach ish tzaddik. Tom haya b'doyrosav. Noach was a tzaddik. So the tzaddik is the yisoid. The tzaddik is the one that stays. The tzaddik, yisoid olam. The tzaddik is the one that's rescued. And I was thinking today, an interesting thing. What was the first thing that Moshe and Aaron did when they came to Pharaoh? What was the first sign they did? What was the first sign? God said, a snake. Take your staff, throw it to the ground, and it's going to turn into a snake. So what does Pharaoh say to that? Come on. Get them, boys. And all of the necromancers, boom, they throw all their staffs, and what happens to them all? They all turn into snakes. Then what happens? Pay attention. Then what happens?
He turns it back into a snake.
So Aaron turns...
Doesn't he eat the snake eat the other snakes?
So it's deeper than that. The snake doesn't eat the other snake. Aaron's staff, that was a snake, doesn't eat the other snakes. Aaron's staff turns back from a snake into a staff, and Aaron's staff eats the other snakes. It's a miracle inside of the miracle. It's Rashi. You got to read Rashi. Rashi says it. He turns back into a staff, and then the staff eats the snakes. So I was thinking today, what's pshat? So pshat is, there was a miracle within a miracle. But I was thinking, maybe you would think that the way to fight the snake, again, this is all hinting to that evil energy, is that you need to activate that snake and just go and... Now, Aaron's staff turns from a snake back into a staff. What's the staff? The staff is a vav. The staff is a vav. Vav is Yosef HaTzadik, the sixth sphere. The vav is the tzaddik. How do you fight all those snakes? With being a tzaddik. Meaning, if you go back to a state of taharat, you don't even need to go into that world. You don't just, you don't need like snake club, fighting them in their, wild underground, situation. Just go back into a staff. The vav is the tzaddik. The tzaddik is soidoilam. Just go and be the vav. Shemaim va'aretz. And through that, you're going to eat up all the snakes. It's a neis b'toich a neis. That's all we need. Is to just go to that world of tzaddik.
Yosef was like the Tikkun Bris.
That's right, and Yosef is all about Tikkun Bris. That's the tzaddik. Tikkun Bris. The whole inyan of the bris of the tzaddik is that all the snakes, all the nachash is cast away. So the Rebbe says, "V'tzarach lahavin ma shaycha shel Tikkun Bris l'mei hashavim." The inyan hu shebeshavuos elu karen b'Torah al shibud Mitzrayim. We're reading now about the entire exile into Mitzrayim. V'yitzias Mitzrayim matan Torah. We go down to Egypt, we come out of Egypt, we get the Torah. Yesh klal shekriya ma'areres sa'inyan. It's very important, you see this a lot in the Sefer, that when you read the Torah portions, it wakes up this idea. Yeah, Baruch Simcha.
The one question I have is, why is of all the mitzvahs and all the great things to do, which can make you a tzaddik, why is it Shmiras Bris, which is the one that's focused on? Why isn't it sort of like hospitality or?
That's a great question.
Angle? Why is it always like sexual related?
Because everything depends on this. This is where a person it makes or breaks the person. A person could be a very fine person. He could be a really nice guy. He doesn't get angry. But everybody knows if he falls in this area, it means he never really had mastery on himself. Everything depends on this. That's why it's called the Yisoid. Yisoid means everything, like a building. A building, you could have the most gorgeous building that you build in Dubai. But if the Yisoidis, if the foundations are shaky, it doesn't matter what you build afterwards. Everything needs to rest on solid foundations. And therefore you could have presidents of the United States that for one little moment, they could throw away everything. And their reputation is destroyed because something about the bris they couldn't, for what? A person who's a master on that area, it shows that he's a mastery over all the Ra. And over everything. That's why that's the sign of the tzaddik. That's the sign of the tzaddik. And therefore, that's the sign of the true commitment of the bris, which means between us and Hashem, that Hashem says, I see you really there. You're really keeping your end of the bargain, to keep kedusha in that area. It's all about this. And the tzaddikim have been talking about this forever. We've always talked about two things, das and bris. Das and Yesod. And that's always in the middle. All the tzaddikim are always in the middle kav of the spheres. Das, which they're also tiferes, the das and Yesod. That's always the tikkun hadas, tikkun habris. Everything is in that area. Ki shersher shel kol davar hu b'Torah kadoisha l'chein kol davar al yidei shaloimdim v'karin oisa b'Torah me'oirin oisa. Everything is found in the Torah. So when you learn it, you awaken it. You awaken this reality during this time. Umemeila al yidei kriyas parshas ela, by learning these parshas. Misoirer mechodesh inyan hashibud v'yetzias mitzrayim v'matan Torah. You're literally reawakening us going down to Egypt. You're reawakening. You're seeing the makas. You're seeing. They asked Lubavitch Rebbe if he reads the news. He says, "Of course I do. I read the weekly parsha. It's all there." And you go to the tzaddikim. Just sit with any tzad. Sit with Ichimar for a few minutes. Anything that's happening, I'll just show the psukim in the Torah. There's a daf yomi. It's whatever the Yidden are doing. It's the world's being created out of the Torah. Hashem looks into the Torah and then makes the world. So you think I'm going to get my news from CNN? You think that's actually the news? Where are they getting? It's all coming out of the Torah. The Torah is Torah's Chaim, Torah's emes. The whole world's being created from the Torah. Histakel beraisa bara alma, which is kol rega. Hashem is recreating the whole world through the Torah. So now the energy is going through the Egyptian bondage and breaking down that identification with just ancient Egyptian schmutz. Egypt was called Ervas Haaretz. It was literally called, excuse me for saying, the private parts of the world, abused. That whole world. And you know Paro's chief advisor was? Bilam. Bilam's claim to fame was bestiality. That's Paro's chief. You could imagine what Egypt was about. The chief advisor, that's the whole schmutz of that world. And during these days, we reject that because that's something that's going to conceal God in our life, and we exit Egypt to come and hike up to Mount Sinai. Why did we need to go there? Like we just mentioned. When we read these parshas and we start fixing what they were fixing from the times of Adam and the times, there was nobody that was nichshol in the bris in Mitzrayim. They weren't nichshol. They were being offered non-stop. There were those that didn't want to leave. We're going to have to talk about that. There were those that didn't want to leave. They got very comfortable in Egypt. A person can get comfortable in slave mentality, but eventually it will never stick. A slave is not a natural state for a human being. That's not right. That's not who we are. Shlomo said, Moshe said, have a guy walk around on all fours. Is it natural for a human who's bipedal to walk around on all fours? Even Mowgli, eventually you'll get up you'll say, how long can I put this charade on? You just can't do it. There are things that are unnatural. It's not natural for us to be in slavery to an ummah. What is our natural state? To be connected to God. So anything that's concealing that, this is the time that we continue to reject that. We should be zoich mamish to this and to mishitz. It can't be here. Amen. Kol tov.